I'm the Artistic Director of the National Youth Jazz Collective. Welcome to our hashtag National Youth Jazz Wednesday, which is our weekly opportunity to meet up with dear colleagues and friends, creative people, young students, audience members, and to actually talk about creative music and where we all are today. I'm thrilled that today's two guests are very dear colleagues and friends who I absolutely adore playing with as well as teaching with. And we've done lots of different projects in different guises, lots of sort of collaborative genre fluid projects as well. So we're going to talk about that side of things, particularly with a reference to folk music, which is a huge influence on both of the composers and performers as well. So I'd like to welcome, first of all, to the stage, if we could welcome Sarah Matthews. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Nice to see you. Thank you very much for having me. Great, thank you. Yeah, great day and nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to talking to you and also finding out a bit about the influence of folk music and how you've got to where you've got to today. Yeah. And I'd also like to welcome to the stage another dear friend and colleague who's also been a very proactive member of our summer school staff and has often taught on our summer schools, Tori Freestone. Hello, Victoria.
Hi. Tori, isn't it? But it's just it's very formal that it's coming up as Victoria Freestone because of my Zoom signing. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's because I'm on screen and I'm just like studiously staring at all the words and I'm not really engaging.
Victoria before.
I've never thought of Victoria. Hi, Tori.
Hi.
Beautiful backdrop there. Lots of sunshine. So you're obviously not in the UK. Where are you, love?
Yeah, I'm in the Canary Islands. Yeah, I'm in the Canary Islands where my mother lives, and I'm staying here for a while this is while everything's going on, and while no concerts are happening, I'm doing some writing out here instead, and I can be near my mum, which is nice.
Beautiful, fantastic. Well, it's really lovely to see you, and we haven't actually physically seen you for a wee while, so it's really nice to have the opportunity to chat. And again, really looking forward to the conversation. And I know that we've got two young guests as well who are dying to be part of the conversation as well. I'm really pleased. What we're going to do today at the beginning, it's new. We don't normally do this, but this is a new thing that we're doing, which is inviting some of our young musicians to actually start the conversation. And they've been coming up with ideas of things they'd like to talk to you about. Then after that, we'll talk to you individually a bit more in depth about your music and the influence of folk music, and also where you were when you were the same age as the young musicians that we work with, because people are always interested to know the journey that's got you to where you are now. So we're really lucky to have two really fine young musicians who we enjoyed working with at the summer school online this summer. And I'd like to welcome baritone player and trombone player Noah Black. Hello, Noah.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Everything's starting up around about now, and so I'm getting a lot more opportunities.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm really glad. And we had such a lovely time together, and I enjoyed, we had a one-to-one lesson talking about baritone and listening to baritone players and playing tunes together. So I'm very much looking forward to doing more of that in the next academic year, see how things go. And then another young musician that we worked with is a very fine violinist, Casey White. Hello, Casey.
Hello.
How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Thank you.
And I know the two of you have been having a bit of a think about the questions you'd like to ask, and they sound fantastic questions. So without further ado, I'm going to step out of the conversation, and I'm going to first of all ask Casey. I think you have got a particular one for Tori that you'd like to ask.
I've seen that you've met and also watched Stefan Grappelli play. What was that like?
Oh, wow. Wow, you know that I met Stefan Grappelli. That's amazing. Well, that was incredible. I met him when I was 7 years old. Yeah, I met him. I don't know how you know that. That's amazing. It must be on the internet somewhere. But yeah, I met him when I was 7 years old, and it was incredible because my parents were very into music, of all sorts, folk music and jazz. And yeah, we went to see a concert of his, which I loved. I grew up listening to a lot of Stefan Grappelli. Actually, used to play a little bit of jazz violin as well, because I play violin too, and I used to sort of love jamming and playing jazz violin. So I listened to a lot of Stefan Grappelli when I was younger, and I was really I just loved his feel and his, you know, his approach to playing violin, because it's so hard to play jazz violin. And it was lovely to meet him. It was incredible. And he shook my hand and he said, hello, little mademoiselle. And it was really sweet. And I have had a signed picture of him, which only recently, it's still in my piano in my house. And recently, just the signature faded away, and it was around the time he passed away, which I found very strange. But yeah, he signed it for me. Yeah, that was lovely.
No, I think you've got one. We'll come back to Casey in a moment because I know you've got another question to ask. But shall we go to Noah first with your first question? And I think you would like to ask both Tori and Sarah. So how about we start with Sarah?
Actually, this is like a question for both of them.
Yeah, so ask Sarah first, and then Tori will answer it as well.
When you write, are you writing mainly for your own instrument, or do you have like the overall sound in mind?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think I probably do more often write for my own instrument, because I'm quite often writing for projects that I'm involved with, but it's not necessarily that I will actually be taking the lead on that, because I really enjoy playing all sorts of parts and harmonies and chord accompaniments. But if I'm writing for a particular project that doesn't just involve me and has lots of participants, then I can be thinking about different instruments that require that piece to be written in a certain way or have a particular range involved. But yeah, I think I probably do write with the violin in mind or the fiddle in mind most of the time.
I think for me it's similar, but it's it depends on which ensemble I'm writing for, because I've got my own trio, and with that it very much is that I write on the sax, because I find it quite a really interesting, more linear way of writing, because it's just drums, bass, and so I've got no chordal instrument. It's just me, so it's very linear the way I write with that. So I'll write riffs and ideas on the sax, and I'll play much more, you know, it'll be much more led by that, and then I'll come up with some other ideas, but I'll be hearing the kind of bass in my head of much more rhythmic ideas as well. So I'm hearing the band, but then I've got a duo, and with that I tend to write at the piano, because it's a duo with a pianist. So I tend to think in much more harmonic way. And then larger ensembles, often it's with those people in mind. So I'm often hearing the sound of those particular people. And a lot of the time I do write with specific people in mind. If I write an ensemble, which is an ensemble of, you know, particular musicians who I know their sound and I love their sound, I'll often sort of hear that. So in a larger ensemble context, it might be actually quite different the way I write. But yeah, so it does actually vary. Yeah, it really does vary. But yeah, it's quite nice to write on your own instrument sometimes, you know, and come up with ideas. But yeah, it's quite random.
I remember when you wrote the piece for Interchange, which is the 10-piece ensemble, you very much had the singer and the trumpet player and in mind when you were writing for the band. Yeah,
because I suppose because I've worked with Yaz and Brigitte a lot, you know, and Brigitte's sound, she's in my duo, right? We often have her on vocals as well. So, you know, I often write with her in mind, you know, yeah. So it really, but also that was really helpful in terms of the range, for instance, because when you don't really know a musician, for instance, this singer Brigitte Barratt, she's got an incredible range, and I know that I can write with that in mind. I know she'll be able to manage anything I write, you know, which is fantastic. So it's nice to have other musicians in mind too, you know, not just think about your own instrument, but, you know, the bigger picture. Yeah.
Have you ever, when you've written, both of you, for these different instruments, have you ever actually physically spent a bit of time sort of messing around on them just to sort of get an empathetic sense of them, or is it more through hearing the sound of that instrumentalist and then just talking to them a bit about the instrument? Do you ever physically try the instrument out? Tori? No, I think I hear it more in my head, you know, rather than trying it out. I mean, obviously, like I said, writing for my duo, I'm writing more harmonically, so I'm at the piano because I play enough piano to, you know, that's how I'll often write. So, but obviously when I'm writing those ideas, I mean, there's a tune called Hermetica, which is in 11, and with a grouping in 5s going across it. Originally, I wrote that for a bigger, larger ensemble, but I condensed it for the duo, knowing that my pianist, Alcyona Mick, again, can play absolutely anything. And, you know, she's amazing. It's about 11 pages, and she manages to page turn as well while she's doing these polyrhythms in each hand. You know, she's incredible. So I know that,
you know, I've got her sound in mind. I'm not any way like a pianist like Alcyona is, but I can write the harmony knowing that she'll fly with it. What she'll do with it will be, you know, if I was writing just, you know, just at the piano myself, not knowing who that was going to be for, I don't think I'd write in the same way. Yeah.
What about Sarah?
Well, there is that really nice opportunity to have the sound of the kind of musical colleague or partner in mind, but also play the composition to them and just allow that process to then continue. So quite a lot of the people that I work with, I kind of have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do with it, and as Tori was saying, like their capabilities and their style. But it's really nice to actually then allow that process to be less prescriptive from me, I suppose, in some ways, and let them put their mark on it and their kind of their characteristics and traits as well. So, yeah.
One thing I wanted to say, actually, sorry, I just remembered something I wanted to say. That I mean, actually,
I didn't get that.
With this situation with COVID, it's actually interesting that, you know, you can actually, I am going to experiment more with using the online facilities. A few of the bands I work with, we've talked about actually recording things into the computer, you know, into Sibelius or with your DAW, whatever you've got available, and sending each other ideas, then recording over it and sending it back. And, you know, it's not a way I've worked so much in the past. I've always waited till I'm in a room with someone and then they can mess around and experiment. But actually, it's quite nice. So in terms of putting that sound into your, you know, that's, you know, rather than you playing it, actually get the people to play it and send it and writing together almost, but writing together online, which is not something we've maybe done so much in the past, but it's a positive.
No, it's interesting what these COVID times are throwing at us and facilitating, isn't it? As you say, the ways in which we're working that we wouldn't have thought of doing before, but might endure after we can hopefully get back to normality.
Casey, I think you've got another question.
For both of you, how long have you been composing?
So Tori.
Well, I suppose ever since I can remember, because I remember sitting at the piano when I was really young, you know, just really enjoying being creative and just trying things out and just playing around. And I wasn't really a piano player, which is my grandma's piano that was like in our house, and I used to love playing it. And you know, whenever I would play anything, I was always improvised, you know, so I played flute first. That was my first instrument, whistles and flute and violin, but I always used to improvise and play around on flute. So because I think, to me, improvising is another form of composing. It's just, to me, composing is slowing down the process, but you know, improvising is like composing on the spot, so it's almost the same process, but one is just you're doing it in the moment, you know. So yeah, I think I was always composing and writing. To me, that's what improvisation is too, you know. So yeah, I think ever since I can remember, since I was maybe, you know, 6 or 7. Yeah.
Sarah.
I totally get what you're saying there, Tori, in terms of improvisation and composition, and a massive sort of crossover there, and very much part of the same processes. For me, I was much more formally musical when I was a young person, and went the classical route. Had a fantastic teacher who really motivated me and engaged me with the instrument and in all sorts of ensembles and orchestral work. But I wasn't being a creative musical person at that time. And I would say it was about 1992 when I left university and was really getting interested in folk music, and started writing tunes for kind of formal reasons, like somebody's wedding or as a gift for somebody, or a particular song. I was very moved when somebody that I knew actually passed away, and I was moved to write my first song then, actually, with words. So it was a later process for me. I think I was more engaged with sort of mastering the instrument and playing other people's works up until that point. So, but it's something I've very much indulged in since, and I absolutely the ideas, improvisation and creative harmony in the spur of the moment has really become my thing since that kind of time period, really. So it's interesting that you say you think very similarly about those two things.
Sarah, I think you've got another couple of questions.
Yes. what music do you listen to outside of the jazz genre that inspires you?
Maybe Sarah to start with on that one.
Outside of the jazz genre. So I don't listen to very much jazz myself. I listen to a lot of folk music, some classical music, but mostly it's folk music for me. But that is an incredibly broad category. It draws in elements from different parts of the world, and because every country has its own folk music, right? And so I'm very interested in particularly in music that relates to people and to place and to lifestyles, something that tells of somebody's history or somebody's story or something that's important or emotional to them, and really kind of relating that to my own life and music within my own world as well. So that's the music that I tend to listen to most of all.
So Tori, when you're not listening to jazz, what else are you listening to?
Yeah, well, I suppose a lot of folk music, you know, because I was brought up with singer-songwriters. I love Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and a lot of the singer-songwriters that I was brought up with again. I also listen to a lot of Latin music. I listen to Brazilian music. I've always loved Brazilian music, and sort of some of my writing's been influenced by that too, Hermeto Pascoal, but more kind of more sort of you know, more basic sort of, Brazilian music, more folky, and salsa, and which is one of the tunes I was going to talk about. Because being here in the Canary Islands, I've been also brought up listening to a lot of salsa over here. It's a Cuban influenced music, and so I played in a lot of Cuban bands too. And funny enough, one of them was on violin and flute, so it's sort of playing a sort of folky kind of Brazilian Cuban music. So I listen to a lot. Yeah, I listen to a lot of very different. Oh, and also yeah, some pop music, but Radiohead is a band I really love, and I'm in actually at the moment just in a band at the moment that's just released an album that's doing a cover of Radiohead, but in a jazz kind of version of that. And we were supposed to be touring and stuff now, but hopefully we will be in the future. So that's an album that's just come out, and so yeah, it's kind of lots of, and I love doing that because it's really lovely. I'm getting to do a crossover of jazz and, you know, something that's a bit more from the pop world. And I love doing that. Actually, generally, it's always having a bit of a crossover, being open to other elements. You know, I don't like to be boxed in and just think of it as like just one genre and we have to play in a certain way, and, you know, just one part of that genre. It's great to have influences from everywhere. So yeah, hopefully.
What's the name of the album that's has got the Radiohead on?
What's that? The name?
Yeah, of the album. It's got the Radiohead.
We did. You know what, I've forgotten. That's terrible. My brain's just completely gone. I'm just reading a review of it.
People can buy it.
Yeah, you know what? I got sent to a review of it. It's like just before we did the interview. It's on here. I just had one of those, you know, in those brain moments. The problem is, I've been speaking in Spanish being here for so long. I'm actually even finding it hard to even remember basic words. Everything all of the time.
Great.
Kid A Revisited. It's Kid A, basically. I was going to say Kid A, but I thought I can't say Kid A because that's the original. Kid A Revisited.
And Noah, I think you've got one more question.
Yes. What artists are you listening to at the moment? What's on your Spotify or CD playlist?
So Tori.
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, because I've been here, just got here trying to sort of relocate and everything, I've not listened to as much music as I normally do. During lockdown, I didn't stop listening to music. Weirdly, I didn't really want to play. It felt almost a bit painful because it was like suddenly you can't play with people. And so all I wanted to do was listen to music. So I actually had my iPod and shuffle, and a lot of stuff came on that I hadn't listened to for a long time, weirdly. I find the iPod quite strange. I feel like it sort of like almost like tells me what I'm supposed to be listening to. And I listened to loads of stuff that I'd really checked out when I was a long time ago, when I was at college, or maybe even, you know, your age, just before going to college. And I would listen, you know, a lot of Kenny Wheeler came on my iPod, but a lot of the Hermeto Pascoal stuff I was talking about, a lot of Joni Mitchell came on. So yeah, I was listening to a lot of that, but just putting the iPod on shuffle and rediscovering things from a long time ago, which was lovely. Yeah.
Sarah.
I I mean about the shuffle function. It's really nice for arriving on something that you haven't actually listened to for a while, and I can get sometimes quite slightly obsessed and slightly kind of repetitive with my listening, and it's really a nice way of shaking that up. But actually, having said that, I you know, the folk genre is so incredibly broad, and I also am quite interested in things that come up into the folk world, into the pop world, and into the rock scene that have got folk influences as well. And there's a lot of crossover in terms of like maybe song or piece structure or chord patterns and that kind of thing. So it kind of marries together really well. So recently I have been listening to the Levelers' new album, for instance, which I totally adore. I also got the Alanis Morissette new album, Such Pretty Forks in the Road, which I really like. In a more folky and kind of traditional way, I've been listening to a beautiful fiddle player who lives in the Sheffield region in England called Rowan Reingans, and she plays with her sister. The Reingans Sisters album is really nice. But slightly further afield, I'm quite a fan of Le Vent du Nord from Canada, and they are a fiddle, box, bass guitar, sometimes piano, sometimes hurdy-gurdy, 4-part harmony vocals, which I really adore, and also Vesson from Sweden. So there's quite a sort of international flavour there. And I've actually just released an album with a percussionist who has a lot of influences from African music. She plays a Guinean balafon and lots of amazing instruments. So that's quite an interesting project with vocals and fiddle and a whole range of percussion, and kind of seeing what we can do with that. So there've been quite a lot of influences in that relationship developing as well. So
brilliant. Well, for the next few minutes, I'm going to actually talk to Sarah about some of the things that we've touched on in the past when we've been working together, and just sort of share a bit more of an insight into your musical world. And then we'll bring Tori back to do the same thing with Tori, and then we'll meet back as a group towards the very end, just in case there are any questions that have come out of our conversations that both Noah and Casey might like to ask. So for now, Noah and Casey, thank you so much. See you at the end. Really appreciate your questions. And moments as well. Really good to see you all. So Sarah, just to contextualise how we first met, I came up to the Midlands, particularly South Derbyshire, where we're looking to set up we run our summer school at the Repton School, which is not far from Burton-on-Trent, between Burton-on-Trent and Derbyshire. And I was very interested in sort of the music of the area, and I coming from South Derbyshire, I know what a big county it is for folk music and brass bands and all sorts of different harmonica, accordion orchestras as well. We've got Karen Street joining us next week, who's going to be talking about the story of the accordion player from Burton-on-Trent. So your name came up in lots of different conversations, but I've never really had the opportunity to sort of sit down and say to you, if you were meeting me for the first time, how would you describe yourself? Who are you?
How would you describe yourself? Well, I come from the south of England. I was born in Berkshire and went to college a bit further north in Leeds, and initially not to study music. Had a break from that and was doing linguistics and phonetics. And so I'm very much interested in communication skills, which that pertains to really. But after that, having trained as a classical musician at school, I had kind of fallen out of love with that, perhaps didn't feel terribly attached to the music that I was playing and very much belonging to it. So I fell into the folk world, if you like, and started exploring how to play folk tunes on my violin and become a folk fiddler. I was very interested broadly in fiddle music. And then as the years progressed, I gradually went to lots of different workshops and learnt more techniques and focused on English traditional fiddle playing. So I was very interested in exploring those skills, developing those techniques, learning lots of different material. And then out of that came an interest in writing as well. And my sort of abilities or passion, I suppose, for doing that thing that we were just talking about, improvising within a session context or within a group dynamic, an ensemble. It just became one of my passions. I'm just really interested in finding harmony, not playing the tune the same 5 times round, but actually finding different things to do with it, exploring different ornamentation, different variations and improvisations on that. And that's really become my thing. And then I did a bit of teacher training, so I'm qualified as a primary school teacher, but that's been enormously helpful in teaching the violin, which is something that I do a lot of now. And then combining things along the way, I'm very interested and passionate about English folk tunes, and I like teaching, so I'm sort of, you know, very much building a kind of some students in this area, have been for years now. So I've been doing lots of teaching of the fiddle, of English folk music, and recently just developed with the help of Derbyshire Music Education Hub, and also a lot of assistance from the English Folk and Song Society down in London, have actually just started the Derbyshire Youth Folk Ensemble. So very proud about that, and we've got a lot of young musicians who are turning their hand to a bit of folk music as part of their overall music education in Derbyshire. So that's kind of exciting. But I'm also a concert player, and I play for dancing, and I play in hospitals. So I'm a musician in healthcare, trained as that as well, when I can get into the hospitals. Of course, this year is very different, but that's a great passion of mine, and I like writing music that's specific for that setting as well. Yeah, and there we are. There's a broad taster of what I like to do.
So I'm very much looking forward to working with you this coming year. We've got a project that we're both part of in South Derbyshire.
Yes.
Passport to Music, which is an introduction to the different genres, with the idea of encouraging them to be genre fluid, so that they just take the ingredients that really resonate and then they create their own music together. And we've worked together. We led a workshop for Derbyshire in one of their residential courses. But the one area that I've not become so familiar with is your duo, and I think that's something that's you're very joyous about. But I haven't had the opportunity to ask you how did it come about?
Is that the duo that I was just talking about with the percussionist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a couple, so I play with lots of different people. But yeah, that was an interesting project. Jo May is the percussionist, and she came up from London actually and moved to Derbyshire about 2 years ago. And so she was looking for a new collaboration. We had crossed paths before. I knew that she was a most excellent player and was really interested in her work. And we had a gig opportunity, so we put together a set. And we didn't really know at that stage how far things would go, but it seemed to be really interesting in this kind of cross-fertilization of these different genres of music. And it's something that I've done before. I've been interested in other projects where we are coming at things from different backgrounds. I've done some work also with Jo May in Composite, which is working with young people, and lots of different types of styles. So we have different kinds of styles of music from professional musicians that are there to play in the ensemble, but lots of different young people coming with different ideas as well. And it's just so fascinating and lovely to be able to work together to bring your skills to the table and allow and facilitate other people to kind of come forth with their ideas. And this melting pot of things that comes from that is far richer and far greater as a creative product than it would have been if it was very genre focused or very person focused. And I think there's a lot of that in Intarsia is the name of the duo, and in fact Intarsia is a gorgeous word that relates to wood marquetry, lots of different sorts of wood going to make a very complex and beautiful picture. And also it's used in kind of tapestry or knitting, where you have loads of different textures weaving together to make a far more complex thing. So Jo and I tend to think that we make a rich acoustic Intarsia. That's our plan anyway.
And that sense of community and coming together and the door being open for anyone to come and be part is really important and integral part of the way that you are as a musician. Wondering if you might share one of your compositions, and maybe we could do it in a way that as you play it, that people can come back and listen to it repeatedly so they can join you on it. So, and maybe say a few words about, you know, the piece.
That's a
and
lovely
anything.
idea. Yeah.
Sort of the influence of folk music, the folk music you've played,
Yeah.
and how it's informed. That'd be wonderful.
Okay, so it's I've got a couple of tunes for you. Normally I'd play them for longer and I'd sort of explore them and expand, but just because we haven't got all evening, I'll play 2 tunes and once through each. They're both actually named after birds. The first is the Silbador, which is a South American bird, and weaves its way and lives within the vines that go to make the Silbador wine. It's just possible that a glass of wine had been taken on this composition, and that inspired the title. And the second of the tunes is called Feathers of Pink and Grey. And if you know your English garden birds, you'll be able to tell what my favourite English bird is. So it's called Feathers of Pink and Grey. They're both schottisches in style, very often influenced by folk melodies and folk rhythms and patterns and the shape and structure in folk music. But then I really enjoy taking it off and perhaps giving it a slightly more modern feel or a slightly more, perhaps a more personal touch. So this is Silbador and the Feathers of Pink and Grey.
When you're playing, you're very physical, and there's, you know, a real sense of groove and dance to it. And I'm wondering, because there is such a close relationship between dance and folk music, and it's something that we often don't talk about when we're working with musicians.
I do. I talk about it.
So much music comes from dance. So I was wondering, if you might talk a little bit about the dance side of things and how it informs you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really aware of, in fact, when I'm writing something that is going to be used for dancing, I'm really aware of it in my body. And a lot of folk musicians, particularly who play dancing, will be on their feet and they've got their knees going and they're feeling it in the shoulders. And it's very much about experiencing the music as a dancer and knowing the speed that human being is going to want to move at and what's possible for them to do. And I am a dancer too. I mean, I'm not like a trained dancer or anything, but I do Morris dancing, I do French, Central French dancing, peasant dances, and I love English ceilidh as well. So there's a lot of, it's a great way of meeting people normally, and it's a great way of keeping fit, and but it's a great way of really understanding where dance tunes come from. And it's ironic in some ways that most people who do enjoy playing Baroque music or any of the kind of dance traditional pieces that are often included in classical repertoire don't necessarily have that relationship with the movement, and so it's just it's something that's quite important to me in terms of composition and knowing how to play something traditional well as well for dancing. And I do play a lot for dances. I play for Morris dancing and for traditional sword dancing, often in the streets. You might find me at a festival playing outside.
We had a conversation today actually with an ensemble that specialises in playing standards from the 1940s and how it relates to sort of Lindy hopping and all that. So we're doing a lot of bringing musicians and dance into what we're doing over the next 12 months. So, and one of the things that I'm really looking forward to.
Craze for Lindy hop, isn't there, at the moment?
It's brilliant, yeah. We're very much looking forward to working with you at the summer school as well in Repton next year, and we definitely want to bring this dance and music, folk dance.
Could we get them all dancing, do you think?
We will, definitely, for sure.
Love it, love it.
So for now, I'm going to say adieu, but not goodbye, because we'll be back again towards the end. But thank you so much. To say to anybody else that's watching as well, that if you've got any questions you would like to ask, please do put them in the chat box, and when we come back towards the end we'll definitely refer to them and ask them. So for now, see you in a few moments. Thanks very much, Sarah. So Tori, might you come and join me? And again, to say to everybody, if you've got any questions for Tori, please do put them in the chat box. Be great to in the comments box of the Facebook page, and then that gets relayed to us in the chat box. So that'd be brilliant. Hi Tori, what did you think of that?
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, it's lovely. You know what, at the moment with the situation with COVID at the moment, every time I hear music, and obviously it's not completely live, well, it is live, but it's not in the same room, but it's just it really affects me whenever I listen to music right now. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So you were saying earlier on yourself, and I've known you for a fair wee while, and I've seen you sort of doing all sorts of different ensembles. I remember the first time we met, you were singing in an ensemble where you were playing flute and singing backing vocals, and you were like an oracle. It was unbelievable. It's like you hear something once and then there it is. You filed it away and out it comes. And I'm wondering, are you aware that you're able to do that? Because it is something that you are very fast. You've got a very quick memory for melody and harmony. And I'm wondering, is that something you've worked at, or is that something that's come naturally?
It's not something I'm aware of, really. No, it's not something I've worked at. I suppose it must have just been, well, actually, funny enough, you were talking about the folk thing, as a kid, picking everything up by ear, playing, you see the trad sessions when people play together and they're just playing and they just join in and they just have to pick it up quickly. Maybe it's that kind of having elements of that in my upbringing, but I don't know. I think it was always there was always music around the house, and it was always, part of, if there were parties, anything, there was always music going on. So I suppose it was just in my psyche. I don't know. But funny enough, though, I've been thinking a lot about language because of being here in the Canaries, and I think a lot of musicians pick up language very, very quickly. And maybe it's a certain sort of part of the brain that we have, this kind of, hearing something once and it's in. I mean, I do feel like that I love being here and picking up language all the time. And, every day you've got a new part of your vocabulary. And I feel like music is like that for me, learning vocabulary. It's how I teach as well. It's like it's got to go in there first, write it down after, because you won't remember it and you won't retain it unless it's gone in that way. So maybe that was just always my way, so it feels natural, but I've never thought about it really.
when you're listening now, because it sort of taking it to the next level, especially the sort of the study of jazz and language like you were talking about, then that level of and even dissecting arrangements and what's a composition made of that's already in existence. How have you gone on to do that sort of intensive listening, so that it's not just been background listening, but you've like really got stuck inside it? And for what purpose? What's the point of listening to something really repeatedly and to that level of almost obsessiveness? What's the point of that?
I suppose again it's just that language thing going in and becoming part of your own language, but you then hopefully using it in your own way. And I suppose that listening obsessively thing, I think talking about that dissecting, I've always done it, not in the background, but I've always not necessarily, I've done transcribing over the years, but I've not necessarily sat down and transcribed it all and written it out and done it in that way. It's been a lot of things. I do enjoy the kind of the organic way of it going in. So like listening to something, like say over and over again, and after a fair few listings, I can sing a solo. To me, once you can sing a solo, hopefully it's in. You could write it down because you could transcribe it from your head. But just like listening to things, so it goes in organically, but it's in there so much that you could sing something. And that was the funny thing with what I was coming back to, that thing of listening to some old tracks in lockdown. There'd be some, I think a Wynton Kelly track came on, and I was singing the whole solo, and then I was thinking, wow, that's so weird. I never transcribed that solo. It must have been at a certain point when I was at college, and you know, the age of some of the you know, kids will be listening today. You know, it's like that was what I was doing. You know, just listening to something over and over again because I just loved it. It wasn't that it was you know, being forced, you know, boot camp, you know, sitting there, got to like write it all down, do it like. Obviously, it's a very good thing to do too. You know, to kind of transcribe in that way too. But yeah, I kind of sort of dissecting it, but in a certain, keeping it musical too, if you know, if you can.
Definitely. And I think it's really tempting now because everything is so accessible and we can basically reach out and listen to anything, that sometimes we forget to give it that repetitive listening and that obsessive listening, and it's almost like deferred listening. So, but you can definitely hear, whenever we do auditions, I can within seconds hear who the main influences are in the young musicians playing, you know. It's great to hear, and that's really exciting. And when we do the interview, it's a really lovely part of the day because then they're very excited about being able to talk to somebody about someone that they're really into, which is great. And that's something that we see when we do the summer school as well, isn't it? That the young musicians come together and they've met peers, people their own age who are really fascinated by the music, and they can work together. Might you give a bit of an insight into what you discovered when you were doing the summer school? Were there any little headlines of particularly working in that context that you hold dear to your heart?
Like them discovering something.
Yeah, anything that you've done when you've been on the summer school teaching. You know.
I remember actually thinking about that, about things you listen to as a certain age. I remember one of the tunes we were doing was a Joni Mitchell tune, and it was and it has this amazing Wayne Shorter solo on it, and and also some Becky Meseleku, who I listened to exactly at their age, because I remember that was my first CD that I ever owned. It was a Becky Meseleku CD.
Great.
We were doing that track, and I remember just some of the students sort of saying to each other, "Oh my God, I listened to." Or one of them was saying, I think Emma, she was saying to one of the other students, "You've got to check this album out. I just love it. It's amazing." And John, you sounds amazing on it. Just so into it. She's saying, "I was one of my favourite albums at the moment." And I was thinking, "Oh, isn't that so lovely?" Because basically, she's the age I was at when I was checking the album out and when I was at a summer school, and felt like I just passed this kind of feeling on this, and you know, onto someone that she was discovering it in the same way. And I was thinking, and that just shows you again as well that music is timeless. It's going to be, these albums are going to be checked out, you know, for generations, and might give the same feeling to some, you know, in like I'm checking stuff out from decades ago. It's not like I only check out stuff that's like in the present. And
which ties into the idea that we had about sort of sharing the influence of folk, because all those different ideas that you've taken, looking back at the tradition and from different parts of the world as well, and how it's influenced your playing. And I think you were going to talk to us a bit about that side of things, how you've drawn on things and made them your own. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, well, I mean, because I was basically, you know, talking about, you know, how I started. I was sort of brought up playing in folk clubs all the time as a kid, and then and had a lot of music around the house. So but also other music too, Brazilian and you know, jazz and sort of blues and all sorts. But you know, very eclectic. But as I got into improvising, I got more and more into the jazz side of things, and went off and sort of studied jazz eventually at Leeds. Again, funny enough, at Leeds College of Music and the Guildhall. And it was like, yeah, I was very much into the jazz path at that point. But it was interesting because I'd left college, and it was quite a few years after that I went and did a gig in Manchester Jazz Festival with a good friend, Neil Yates, who we know through Nigel, who writes very folky music, very influenced by that. And I kind of, it really gave me the confidence to kind of, I was thinking, actually, I always felt almost not embarrassed, but a bit strange about my, you know, folk background, that it wasn't kind of fitting in with what I do now. And I kind of went back and rediscovered some old tunes that I'd written, and they were all very folk influenced. It just gave me the confidence to do that, and you know, realise that, you know, there's a whole language there that I could fuse with what I do, and you know, still very influenced by. And I'm also, like Sarah was saying, influenced by my surroundings. So you know, background and surroundings. So I've written more recently folk music of another type, which is the salsa and Cuban music that I've been so influenced by over the years. And coming here to the Canary Islands, I've written some tunes influenced by that too, and also some Brazilian tunes too, that you know, Brazilian influenced tunes as well.
So then do you take those pieces that you've written back into, because you've got a lovely family of musicians that you like to work with. You've already talked about the duet and the larger ensemble that you've got, and the various combinations. Do you then take it back into that sort of family, or do you change the musicians that you play with because of that, bringing in the different ingredients?
For instance, say my trio, for instance, I might come up with something, some ideas, and they do definitely add in. I know what they're going to do with it, but sometimes they will just kind of do what I was expecting and then a bit more. I make suggestions, and so yeah, I do kind of work with who I'm with, and also they're also all very open. You know, my trio, for instance, Dave, he's very, very into folk music, so he's kind of very much open to a lot of the. So a few of the things I've done, say my trio, I've written some, well, not written, I've actually taken traditional sea shanties. A lot of the influence I've had is sea shanties. My father was at sea, and I was brought up singing a lot of those. So there might be a sea shanty. There's one called The Press Gang that's on one of my more recent albums. And, you know, I'll take that sea shanty and I'll arrange it, you know, I'll rearrange it. And someone like Dave, for instance, my bass player, is very open to that because he listens to a lot of that music. So he immediately can kind of know what I'm going for. And Tim too, the drummer in my trio. Same as my pianist in my duo, she's very open to lots of, she plays a lot of Arabic music, she plays a lot of world music, she's into a lot of it, but also in the London Jazz Orchestra like I am. And we are very influenced by some very similar music, and same with Brigitte. So yeah, a lot of the musicians I work with, you know, they're very open musicians. They're not, you know, sort of, it's not a narrow kind of, you know, sort of genre that they, you know.
Quite genre fluid.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
just being musicians and
yeah, sure. But you know, some people do tend to sort of think, oh, this is what I do, and this other limit I'm very into, you know, which is also amazing. You know, people kind of get obsessed with just one little thing and become ridiculous at it. But for me, I prefer, you know, I've had a bit of an eclectic, you know, yeah, I've got eclectic taste, and I love introducing that into my music, you know, and things like, you know, listening to Sarah earlier and listening to all the trills and the kind of amazing, I love the kind of ornaments and trills that you get in folk music, and I'll do that on the saxophone, for instance. If I try just quickly,
yeah, definitely, that'd be wonderful.
The tune I arranged for the Press Gang, and so they've done a kind of jazz arrangement of it because it's got like more, it kind of opens up into, starts with a drone like you would get in the folk way, and then it gradually goes into more kind of jazz harmony in a way, more sort of a contemporary harmony, you know, eventually. But the basic, you know, just the melody, I use quite a lot of trills and those ornaments, you know, on the saxophone. So I mean, they're normally things I do on whistle, you know, violin, but kind of, you know, so if I just play the melody to it, so. That's a tune, and then, you know, it's got lots of, then starts becoming more unusual harmony underneath it, more contemporary, you know, starts very basic. And then I go, there's another tune it leads into, which is based on a riff, which is based on a folk riff, what that I wrote, you know, I've kind of written in a folk riff. Then carries on, but with the trio, I've then had like this kind of polyrhythmic. So again, you know, you start having the more contemporary kind of idea. Once they enter it, it's very polyrhythmic, three lines going on over each other. So it kind of starts with the, you know, folky ideas, but I wrote that in the Highlands in Scotland. Quite where I was. I'm always kind of writing kind of based on where I am. But you know, then it's become, you know, the structure of the tune again very much.
We're losing you a little bit. I don't know if the microphone has moved or you've moved, but just a little bit. It's difficult.
You hear me?
Yeah, that's beautiful now. That's brilliant.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
So you're saying the second thing that you've written, it was a riff that you wrote, and then you made it poly.
Yeah. So
polyrhythmic.
Rhythms that come in underneath. So once the bass enters it, then it starts off as a kind of folky feel, and then once the bass enters, it's like more of like a funky kind of but going polyrhythmic, so rhythms going against each other. I did kind of send Nick some examples of all these if he wants to play.
Might you like to play one example just to sort of show it?
Yeah, sure. Nick. It was basically, I sent him a link to this one called Identity Protection, which is that riff we want to play.
Right.
Coming right up.
Fantastic. It's great. I'm wondering, you know, when you write things, do you think, because there are sort of two ways of hearing it, either do you hear it linearly and then the harmony comes out the line, or do you think, oh, this melody is going to go to that chord, so now I'm going to adapt it to spell that chord out? How are you thinking in this one?
I think it varies, actually. I think with that one I had thought linearly and then sort of worked out sort of the harmony that's going on underneath. Yeah, that was very much a linear composition. I'd wrote that first of all as a riff, and then started hearing the bass riff, and then hearing that it's all crossing over and eventually all comes together. Do that quite a lot. I don't know if you have this when you're composing, but I have it quite a lot where I've got some riff and I can hear another line going on, and it's happened with a few of the more linear compositions I've done, and that the one I always mentioned, the Brazilian influence one called Hermetica, where I'm playing, you know, where Alcyona's got to play in 11 and 5s going across it. And often when the point when it comes together, I can hear that it all comes together at a certain point, but I've not actually, again, like we were talking about when you're listening to tunes, to sort of transcribing stuff, you know, I don't necessarily transcribe it, but you can hear it all. And it's like I can hear it all in my head and it's all coming together. And it's only when I write it down I suddenly think, oh, wow, okay, that's how that works. And that's why I was hearing that bar of nothing happening in that bar, or all this particularly, you know, weird three beats at this point. You know, it's strange. It's like processing it all in this, but it often happens when I'm trying to sleep. I don't know if you have that, but it's often when I'm trying to sleep, I'll suddenly get all these ideas and suddenly they'll all come together, and they'll have to get up in the middle of the night and something.
Walking along the corridor, I've got quite a long apartment, and so the corridor is quite long, and I'm often find myself whistling something halfway along and then having to double back. It down. But I'm like, I hear all the counterpoint at the same time. So for me, often it's like looking at the byproduct, the harmony is the byproduct, and then I'll look at what the harmony it's creating. So, but I think all of it is because of the fact we've done that obsessive listening, and then when our muse is then let free to be creative, it's because we've kind of built up that musicianship, that level of musicianship through all that, you know, listening to things and dissecting it and all that, that then when it comes to us being free to do it ourselves, we've got that strength of musicianship to draw on. So it really feeds in, not only is it feeding into sort of the ear instrument, developing your ear so that when you can hear something you can play it, but also as a composer it's freeing you up to think in an ensemble way, of lots of ideas at the same time. I'm wondering whether we might bring everybody back and see, first of all, Noah and Casey, if anything that's come out of the conversation has left you. Sarah and Noah and Casey, might you rejoin us? First of all, if there's anything from Noah.
Hi.
Is there anything that's come out of the conversations that's left you with either a comment or a question?
Yes, I have 3.
Okay.
Quite a lot.
Go for it.
Tori, I saw you playing live with your trio at Foyles earlier this year, and it was very intimate. Do you enjoy playing in small venues or prefer larger audiences?
And I do love playing in small venues. So it's a shame at the moment. I just hope with COVID that we can all get back to playing in those smaller venues at some point. Because yeah, I do love that. I love that kind of, yeah, you know, that intimacy. It's you know, it's amazing obviously to play in a large venue, some beautiful space. You know, and I did have one amazing gig a few years ago with Alcyona with a duo, because we played in the Symphony Hall in Birmingham, which was just incredible. You know, that was lovely to get this amazing sound, playing flute, and it kind of carrying through the whole building. You know, so that's incredible. But generally, yeah, I do love that intimacy of, you know, I play a lot of the Vortex and a lot of these kind of smaller jazz clubs. And actually some of the UK tours I've done, some of my favourite gigs have been in little pubs, little back rooms where the sound is amazing. And, you know, you go to sometimes go to these purpose-built venues and you never get the same sound, you know. So, yeah, I like that intimacy, yeah.
Casey, might you have one, and then we'll go back to Noah. Have you got a question, Lovey?
Do you have any tips for young people that want to become professional musicians in the future?
So Sarah.
Tips for becoming a professional musician. That's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer it very well on the spur of the moment. But obviously there's practicing and feeling really comfortable and confident with your instrument, but also I think being really true to yourself and what you are actually really interested in musically is really important. It's really interesting what Tori was just saying about that sense of intimacy in a small and the thing that I really enjoy most about my musical profession is that ability to connect with somebody through music, and I get such a tremendous amount of reward and kind of gratification from that, I suppose. I'm not sure if that's what makes me a professional musician. It might be difficult to define in right here, right now, what being a professional musician is, but certainly, as well as doing it for money, to be able to be really satisfied with what you're doing and be really passionate about what you're doing because of what you personally are able to give somebody and get back from them as well. I don't know if that's a very good answer to the question, but it's one angle on it anyway.
Tori, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Thanks.
I would just say be tough, you know, because it can be tough, but, you know, be really tough and just but you know, yeah, be very, I think the same really, be very true to yourself. Don't let, you know, as your career goes on, you know, you have to be you know, quite tough about sort of sticking to what you do and not getting and not feeling like, you know, pressure to well, even to be constantly gigging, constantly working. It might be that you just you know, you just need to do what you do and stay true to your own, you know, creative process. Yeah, I feel like sometimes there's a lot of pressure to be kind of constantly working, and it might be that you're happier just composing and doing some of your own kind of work at home. I know, but I think it's quite a tough profession. So just keeping at it and keeping going and keeping the practice going. And if you're not getting lots of work, not worrying about that, just thinking, you know, I do it because I love it. And ultimately, that's why I do it because I absolutely love it. And you know, even during this time when you can't play with anyone, you know, there are ways to be creative. There are ways to keep it going.
Sarah, you wanted
Can I just jump back in with a little bit of an extension of all of that? I think that there's quite a lot of competition within music. Obviously, there's a lot of amazing musicians out there. But I think if this idea of being really knowing what you feel you're good at and what you feel you want to be involved with, it helps you to feel really confident in what you're doing as well. And I think if you're confident and you know what it is that you're good at, that helps you just to not worry too much about what other people think, but actually to stay true to what you would like to be as a musician. So I think that's really important, actually.
I think I would add to that as well that if you're just constantly playing with strangers, that can be quite depleting. It's really good to build up a family of musicians as well that you enjoy working with and get the balance, because you know, that strength, you feed from each other's strengths in a way that you can't do on your own, and some magic happens that you just can't possibly generate on your own. And that familiarity as well, people that know you can, every time you meet, you can take it the next step. So, and that's I often do that, where I take a few musicians that I already work with, because I do a lot of writing for big band and large ensembles. I might take a few musicians I already know into that new environment, because then they help with sharing some of the musical ideas in a musical way. We don't even have to talk about it. They're just by being dotted amongst all the other musicians, it sort of permeates and spreads. So, and then the like you say, the sense of competition goes away, because everybody suddenly realise that they're all part of the same family, and they're all there to make music and for the end product to be something that we all enjoy sharing with our audience. Or I think audiences are really important, and I don't think we talk about those enough, but they give us the energy to play. And Tori, I know I've seen you play a lot, and that sort of intimacy, and from Sarah talking, I wondered if you might, are there places that you both really particularly enjoy playing because of the audience? So Tori, maybe, is there a particular audience that you think, actually, I really like going to play there?
I think just what we were talking about before, really, just the smaller type venues, you know, sort of just sometimes it can be a tiny audience, and yet you get a real vibe from them, you know. But I mean, I play a lot of the Vortex. That feels like home to me. That feels like a second home, my third home, because this is my second home in the Canary Islands. So it feels a little bit like my third home, you know, like it's just like there. It's a community of musicians, like you're talking about. You build up this community of musicians. I feel like there. If I go over to see a gig there, I love going and seeing gigs as well. And if I go to see a gig there, I know I'm just going to have like a community of musicians around me, and that's a lovely thing, and I'm missing that at the moment. But yeah, that's one place maybe, but that's maybe because it feels like a third home, because it's you know, I mean, I rehearse there every month normally with the London Jazz Orchestra as well, and that's got a whole history of, you know, being resident of the Vortex for decades, and right. You know, all of these people who went through it, who were my, you know, who are my heroes, you know, like, you know, Kenny Wheeler and John Taylor and all of these guys that I was checking out when I was at summer school. That's when I first got to hear them and actually got to be taught by some of them, you know, that actually, yeah, that's right. So that venue, it feels very familiar, and it feels like it's
Sarah, have you got an equivalent to the Vortex, sort of a second, third home? Is there somewhere?
Well, I was going to say something, I suppose, a bit radical. I love to play, and I feel wherever I feel at home. So I work quite hard, and I don't always get it right, but wherever I feel that sense of calm and confidence and connection with the audience. And lately I've been trying really hard not to be the all singing, all dancing kind of performer, but actually think about what is it that the audience need from me today, and how can I actually connect with them and draw them into the music more, get them involved, get them to feel really relaxed and enjoying it as much as they can. And so I'm going to be a little bit obscure and say that it can be in hospital next to somebody's bed, it can be in the biggest folk festival tent, it can be in the smallest pub venue, and hopefully it can also be online. This is our challenge these days, isn't it? I've got a concert coming up on the 21st of October with a team called Live to Your Living Room, and they've been doing a lot of folk concerts. They're going to do all sorts of concerts, so do check them out if anybody's interested in performing online and reaching an audience. But so that's the next challenge, isn't it? Can we reach people on the other side of the computer screen, further across the internet, and still have that kind of intimacy and that shared musical experience?
Well, that segues nicely into someone that's on the other side of a screen. I'd like to welcome back to the stage, please. Can we say hello to Nick Brown, who's our programme manager? Nick, you're going to tell us what we can do if we want to donate and support our work, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, and also who's joining us next week.
Absolutely. So starting with next week, we've got the amazing Shirley Smart and Karen Street joining us, which is going to be really exciting. And then if you would like to make a donation to NYJC's much needed bursary fund, it's nationalyouthjazz.co.uk/donate. And if you would like to sign up for our newsletter, it's nationalyouthjazz.co.uk/sign up.
So just to say about the donating side of things, As you can imagine, we're really keen to get our young musicians together. We spent the summer school and we're now learning repertoire online, with the caveat that we were then going to bring everybody together in their ensembles. We're lucky because our ensembles are small, so we can do nonettes. But obviously that's got additional costs with having to have the PPE and the risk assessment side of things. So we have already spent most of our bursary fund, and we're trying to build it up to bring in the young musicians for the next academic year. But if you would like to donate and support our work, we're really keen to make sure all young musicians of all backgrounds can access our work. Because creativity is creativity, it's got no barriers, and that's what we love so much about our music and the way we play together. I'd like to thank for this evening. It's been a fantastic conversation. First of all, the young two musicians who came with questions. I'd like to thank Noah Black. Thank you very much, Noah.
Thank
you.
Casey
Casey White. Thank you so much, Casey. Yeah. See you very soon. And then I'm very much hoping that our two special guests who have not actually met before have really enjoyed meeting each other. I'm wondering, as a parting sentence, if there's anything that's come out of the conversation that the two of you might want to share of having met each other online. So Sarah and Tori, is there anything that's come out? Sarah, go for it.
Thank you. I just really wanted to say I really enjoyed listening to your music there, and to be able to hear the different layers of things that are going on. I just really enjoyed the obvious kind of folk influences, but then all of the mix of genres there and how far that had gone. And I would be blessed if I could be in some kind of I suppose collaborative work with you someday. That would be lovely.
Lovely. Well, I was actually thinking when you were talking earlier as well about learning and stuff, I had thought about, during lockdown, and lots of people were getting into new hobbies and new things, and I was thinking, I'd love to just get into my violin playing again a bit more. And I was thinking, maybe I could get some online kind of something online with you at some point, and maybe we could even do some kind of I call it intercambio, because I can't think of the word in English, exchange. I could do intercambio di una mass here, which is like language exchange, same sort of thing, language exchange or some kind of thing. Like, well, it would be lovely to do that. Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of what we all do. It's an ongoing journey. There is there is a beginning, but there is no end, and that's the fantastic thing about what we're all doing. So without further ado, for this evening, I'm going to thank everybody for watching. I hope to see you again next week, when I'll be with Shirley, who's a cellist, and Karen, who's an accordion player, and we're going to be talking about having those sort of the unorthodox instruments and how does that all fit into the music that we play. But for now, I'd like to thank very much Noah. Nice. Thank you. Casey, thank you. Sarah, lovely to see you, Sarah. See you very soon up in South Derbyshire. And Tori, really hope to see you really soon. As soon as you get back to London, I've got Brompton bike now, so let's go bike riding.
Yeah. I'm missing my Brompton. I'm going to go have a road bike here, but it's only you can only go that way or that way here. Basically, there's a volcano just outside. It's very strange. From my window, I can see a volcano.
Wow.
So here you just go, literally. Yeah.
Okay, Nick, thanks so much, Nick. See you tomorrow or whenever, but in the meantime, thanks everybody. See you next week. Ciao.